Okay, let's go ahead and get started. If for almost, I've been doing this webinar for a decade. Not the same exact one, of course, it's changed. But I would have this fake audience video applause for every webinar. I don't have it today. It's kind of my walk up music, theme music, if you will. So hopefully that introduction was good enough for you. So really quickly about me before we dive in. I'm not sure there's been a PBM that's been as honest and open about how we do business more so than Transparent RX. And that's going to be true today. Uh, some of it is selfish in that our business model is fiduciary. We'll talk a little bit about what that means for employer sponsor plans. But we want to help people pull their heads out of the sand, sit at the table with PBMs with the same amount of information and the same amount of knowledge to interpret that information. That's how long-term change occurs. So why should you listen to anything that I say? Well, let me give you a reason. I started in the pharmaceutical industry about two decades ago. I started out with Eli Lilly. I worked in the diabetes care division as a drug sales rep. Was good enough at that, fortunately, to move inside to the corporate offices where I led a market access team. My team was responsible for negotiating with PBMs to pay them rebates to get our diabetes drugs onto a preferred tier within the formulary. Had always wanted to have a little bit more control over my future and to affect change. And so I left there, started a mail order pharmacy, ran it for almost 5 years, licensed nationally. Was frustrated by the reimbursements coming back from PBMs. Really got into pharmacy naively and was offered take it or leave it deals by these PBMs where our reimbursements, especially on brand drugs, what we were getting paid would be less than what we paid for the drug. How does that work? How was that allowed? That was over 10 years ago, and we're just now addressing it. We're just now starting to address that. So I understand the plight of independent pharmacy owners better maybe than any other PBM. And so we don't want to put them out of business. We want to reimburse them fairly. And so from that frustration, Transparent RX was born to compete directly with the PBMs that were sticking it to me. I love competition. It's like oxygen to me. Without it, I don't know what I would do with myself. And just when you think there's nothing else to do, the PBMs add another layer to it. We're going to talk about that here in a second. And so that's enough about me. Let's get into the presentation that is about you. Before I go any further, it's important that you understand the PBM business model. We're hired because employers and health plans and government institutions and unions, they want to provide a pharmacy benefit to their members and those members' dependents. And so they hire us primarily to provide their members with access to those drugs via the contracts that we establish with pharmacies. Now, it's not a very difficult process to do that. Once you get the direct contracts with the big chains and the big supermarkets, now you contract as a PBM with the PSAOs who have the contracts with all the independent pharmacies. So you contract with a PSAO, and then you might get 5 or 6, maybe even 10,000 pharmacies that go through the PSO to get the PBM pricing. Now, when you look, and these are our clients here. So when you look at this reimbursement distribution system, I hope what you will notice is, unless a PBM owns a pharmacy, we never take control of the drug. We don't have inventory. It's always been a conflict of interest when a PBM owns a pharmacy. The state of Arkansas just recently addressed that, putting into law, if you're a PBM, you can't own any pharmacies in the state of Arkansas. CVS is closing or has closed over 20 pharmacies in the state of Arkansas. Why? Because they own a PBM and they own pharmacies. It's a conflict of interest. Even if a bad action didn't take place, it's still a conflict of interest because it has the potential to act badly. We all offer the same services. What differs is how we implement and execute on those services. What differs is the PBM's intent as it provides these services. And so we all offer formulary management, account management, member support, MTM, utilization management. Most, if not all, offer some sort of pharmacogenomics programs. But how we differ is our intent as we execute on these programs. Is it about doing what's in the client's best interest, or is it about maximizing our profit? Cost is a concern. It's been all across the news, the executive order about most favored nation pricing. In other words, the United States won't pay more than the lowest price another nation is paying with drug manufacturers. Now, I have my doubts that will happen. The drug makers, I believe, will ultimately sue, and maybe they'll meet somewhere in the middle. But even if they volunteer, what they're going to have to do if they're not forced through law to lower their prices and take their hit for their shareholders, there's no chance that they're not going to sue. I guess there's a slight 1% maybe. Right? But no matter what happens, employer-sponsored plans are on their own. There's no help for you. So the uninformed will be left to offset the losses, if there are any, that drug makers and PBMs take as a result of this executive order. So when we talk about controlling prescription drug prices, managing costs, managing the trend, cost management, the focus, and I'm going to say it, too much of it is on price. That's not to say price isn't important, because it is, right? What are the components of price? The discount off of AWP, a NADAC plus, right? Rebates, which are supposed to get you to lowest net cost. These are all components of price. It is important, don't get me wrong, but not nearly enough attention is being placed on utilization and product mix. Not nearly enough. And we're going to spend time on that today, right? And so product mix and utilization are about what? Clinical management and benefit design. Cost share, about benefit design. Accumulator programs, copay accumulator programs, which impact member cost share, have never been good. PBMs want you to believe that without them, we're going to have all these high cost brand drugs, because that's what the manufacturers want when they provide these copay cards, right? Well, the benefit design stops that. Not copay accumulators. They just pad the pockets of PBMs. The benefit design and the clinical management stops that. And so the price is all about the contract. And I don't know, when I was in college and I had this business law class, the two things I took away from that class, and I still remember to this day. The first one is, he was a lawyer, and he would say at least once a week, never enter into a partnership if you start a business. He said, never do that. The second thing he said, a backwards K means contract. The price is all about the contract. If the contract is bad, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to fix it during the course of that contract. If it's bad, it's going to stay bad until that contract comes up for renewal, and then you fix it. These two are about the benefit design and the clinical management, primarily the formulary and the utilization management programs. So PBMs, let's go to the 4 business models. And I'm going to list them based on alignment with client's interest, alignment with the client's best interest. I'm going to start from low alignment and go to high alignment. Traditional PBMs, lowest alignment. They're trying to make money any which way they can, and they're trying to be as opaque, despite saying we're transparent and pass through, as they can be. They're trying to make money from all 4 of these different buckets. Right now, specialty pharmacy drives the highest percentage of those types of PBMs profits. They own the biggest specialty pharmacies, and they steer patients through those pharmacies, even though they're the most expensive. You're going to see that here in a second. So you've got traditional PBMs. They're trying to maximize profits through all 4 of these buckets. And then you have the pass-through PBMs. They're more aligned than the traditional, but still a lot of room left to grow in terms of alignment with clients' best interest. After pass-through, you've got now relatively newer, transparent PBMs. They're still not fully aligned. Pass-through and transparent PBMs, they're still not fully aligned to the client's best interest. While they're not making money from every one of these 4 buckets you see on your screen, they might be generating revenue through 1 or 2 of them. And some of them will say we're pass-through and transparent, but then ask you to let them keep the rebates as their fee. But what they don't say is they allow high-cost drugs to be dispensed at a higher clip to generate higher fees than, say, a fiduciary PBM, which is the best aligned to a client's interest would. When there are lower cost therapeutic alternatives available at a higher clip, they will allow those higher cost drugs to be dispensed because they know they're getting all the rebates and they want to drive up their fees. So I'm going to just start with the pricing, and then we're going to, in terms of cost drivers, I'm going to start with the pricing, and I'm going to share with you some stuff you may or you may not have seen yet before. And then we're going to work through the utilization and then the product mix piece and tie it all together with the cost shared. About pricing, I touched on the contract. On page 1 of the contract, the foundation for the financials are set through the contract definitions. Most of the time, those definitions are taken for granted and just kind of glossed over. Or if they are addressed and they're marked up, the ones that impact pricing and transparency are left alone. Those definitions where you have to make them transparent and you need to know what transparency looks like for those definitions. And just being an attorney, graduating summa cum laude from Harvard isn't enough. You got to have training in this business to understand the implications of the terms. Brand drug, generic drug, specialty drug, rebates, AWP, NADAC. These terms have to have the constituent elements spelled out. If the goal is, I want my clients or I want my company to be perfectly aligned with my PBM or with the PBM we hire, that only happens when the PBM is fiduciary and that ERISA fiduciary standard language is in the contract. It prevents these, I guess, hidden cash flow opportunities to be taken advantage of by the PBM, and they know it. And that's why some of them will push back. And some of them will even explicitly in the contract say, we're not a fiduciary. In other words, we don't want to work in your best interest. We want to work in our best interest too, which means we're going to make money and not tell you about it. Or we're not going to disclose how much we make. So some examples of that lack of fiduciary obligation is cost offsets. I've seen all of the contracts from the big five. I've seen them. And some of those contracts will say, well, if we overperform in rebates, then we can take that overperformance and apply it in our network discount pricing guarantees, such that if we underperform, we can apply that overperformance in the rebates here, so we don't have to pay you any missed guarantee dollars. That's worse than missing in a pricing guarantee in one channel, say 30-day of retail, overperforming at 90-day of retail, and taking that overperformance in the pricing guarantee and applying it in a different channel. Rebates and pricing guarantees are two different types of guarantees completely. And they're doing this. Single source generics excluded from the generic discount guarantee, where the PBM will say, for all generics, we promise a minimum 85% discount performance off of AWP. Except we're going to exclude single source generics from that. Not only are we going to exclude single source generics, and why would they do that? Because the discounts are lower on single source generics than they are multi-source generics. Not only are we going to exclude single source generics from the discount guarantee. We're going to move them to the brand discount guarantee. So while the SSG single source generic discounts are lower than those from the multi-source, they're significantly higher than the brand drug discounts. So it lifts the brand drug discounts and lifts the generic performance discount. So there's spread pricing. There's also rebate spreads. The difference between what the PBM takes in and what it actually pays out. I did this for a living. We say, here's what we're willing to pay. Here's the total dollars we're willing to pay. The PBM says, okay, let's break it up like this. We're going to put 25% in access rebates. We're going to put 50% in administrative fee rebates. We're going to put 10% in market share, and we're going to leave the other 15% for all these other different names for rebates. Our ultimate goal by doing this, otherwise, why wouldn't you just call it manufacturer revenue? Is to generate profits for the PBM. This looks reasonable enough, this definition, right? It looks reasonable enough. Very few benefits directors with training or CFOs with training in the PBM industry would balk at this definition unless they had some training. Very few have sufficient to say, no, this ain't right. But to the untrained eye, this looks fair. You key in on administrator will pay 100%, and that's good enough until you see something like this. This is public information. And let me say this before I go any further. I make definitive statements quite often. I want you to put this phrase in front of a definitive statement that I make, generally speaking. And also, if I make definitive statements, I try to back them up with proof, because no one trusts PBMs. I don't blame you. I don't. Broward County smelled something fishy. So they hired an auditor, a law firm, to look into their rebates. What they uncovered was Optum had a subsidiary, Coalition for Advanced Pharmacy Services. It was owned by Optum, but it was still a separate company. That company had a contract or piggybacked off of Express Scripts' primary contract with the drug manufacturer, the master contract with the drug manufacturer. This is not uncommon. I don't like it. So many layers. We're going to break those layers down here in a bit. But it's not uncommon. The drug manufacturer might say, we only want to deal with one PBM, and then you enter into contracts with the others. And by the way, the contracts we negotiate with rebate aggregators and pharmacy networks, our responsibility is no different than a broker or consultant or a director of benefits. All PBMs are not created equal in their ability to negotiate and their knowledge. There are PBMs 50 times the size as the one I own who don't get claim level detail from their rebate aggregator. Who don't get claim level rebate detail from their aggregator. Broward County uncovered just over $500,000 in rebates that Optum subsidiary had kept and did not pass back to Broward because Optum itself had not received those rebates. Its subsidiary had received those rebates. Broward County said, we want that money. What is Optum going to do? Say no? You're not going to say no to a government entity. It's not going to happen. But what about Vicky's nail shop that has a chain of 20 stores and 200 staff? What about her? What about Ted's Body Shop? He's got six body shops with 150 employees, and he's self-funded. What about him? They get their nose thumbed at. Where rebates are concerned, our rebate aggregator has a portal. In that portal, we upload our claims data every month. They send us a template via SFTP. They send us a template. And the drug manufacturer, it's all really mandated by the drug manufacturer. Because why? They're paying the money. They dictate the information that they want. Of course, well, no, there's no, they dictate the information that they want. And so what happens is we send this, and the information, it's, if you're using an Excel file, it'll go all the way to column BZ, something crazy. And so the rebate aggregator will consolidate all of that claims information every month from their clients. Their clients are other PBMs, health systems, unions, could be city, school districts, whoever is paid rebates. These entities deal with rebate aggregators. The rebate aggregator will aggregate all of that claims data, send it to the drug manufacturer. The drug but before they send that information to the drug manufacturer, MDRS stands for Medical Drug Rebate System. It's just a software module to manage this whole process. But anyway, when the rebate aggregator sends the information to the drug manufacturer, it has to be in NCPDP format, right? You can't send different formats. Every rebate aggregator is using the same format, sending it to the drug manufacturer. The drug manufacturer is going to reconcile the rebates it receives against the contract that it has with the rebate aggregator. When it does that, it pays the rebate aggregator, sends along with the payment an explanation of payments. The rebate aggregator will then send the payments earned by its clients based upon the contract the aggregator has with its individual clients. That's how rebate aggregation works. Here are the big three. Remember when I said I love competition? Remember when I said I love competition? This just added another 10 more years to my fight. The big three PBMs have created not just their own rebate aggregator, which they had prior to creating or putting the rebate aggregation services under a GPO umbrella, a group purchasing organization umbrella, modeling it after GPOs on the medical side. And so by doing this, what are they doing? They're protecting the revenue that they earn from rebates. So as you get more intelligent and more programs come out, like the Certified Pharmacy Benefit Specialist program, that are exposing these types of opaque practices, they move the goalpost. We've got some tough competitors, relentless. And so now, instead of receiving a $5,000 rebate from a drug maker and keeping $2,500 of that and passing back $2,500 to their client, they can go to drug makers, they are going to drug makers and saying, hey, we've got this GPO, we're managing rebates for everyone. Their competitors have to go through them to get access to rebates. That's a flex. It's major. It's a major flex. I got to tell you, although I dislike it, I like it because they're doing what they need to do to survive. And now their competitors have to step up and address this for their clients. I like the competition. And so, they've made it so that they've got the contracts with the drug makers. And now, in order to get the rebates, everyone has to go through them. Can you believe that? And so this is how it typically works. We talk about rebate spreads. And by the way, the GPOs, they go to the drug makers and say, we want a percent, right? We want a percent. It's a fee called a GMF, a GPO management fee. And so the drug makers don't add dollars to the pool they're willing to pay, because now they're paying a GPO administrative fee, a management fee. It takes away from the total dollars available to the PBM's clients, the health plans, the third-party payers. It reduces the pool of dollars available. But to these PBMs, these rebate aggregator GPOs, it's a way to protect the lost revenue because you're clawing back, you're reducing the rebate spreads. And so, and this is a myth. So you would believe that if you are contracted with one of the big PBMs that owns the rebate aggregator GPO, then you or your client are automatically entitled to the largest rebates because you are technically closest to the GPO because your PBM owns the GPO. Well, then that would mean everything I told you about the contract and the definitions setting the foundation for the financials isn't true. If your aggregator sits here or here, and you have a radically transparent contract with your aggregator, meaning there's no leakage that you're not aware of, to the penny, and you're getting claim level detail. Don't tell me I'm transparent pass through with my rebates if you don't get claim level detail. for every claim, what was eligible, what was ineligible, and if it's eligible, what was the guarantee for that claim at the NDC level, the date that drug was dispensed, what pharmacy dispensed it, what was the day supply, and what was the quantity. That's claim level detail. And then what was the guarantee and what did we actually receive for that claim that was eligible for a rebate? Push back if you believe that your arrangement is passed through and transparent and you're not receiving that level of detail. An aggregator that is here and is potentially an aggregator for you or your client, and it's radically transparent, could offer better rebates than an aggregator that is here that isn't transparent or radically transparent. The pricing is determined by the contract, not what the PBM says, not what the aggregator says. What is it memorialized in the contract? That's what matters. There was a senator out of New Hampshire. I forget her name. She is a senator. She wrote an op-ed about a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago. And I don't know her name, but you could probably look it up online. But anyway, long before she became a senator, she worked in finance at some financial firm where her job was to research and write theses on potential investment opportunities for institutional money. And one of her projects was to write a thesis on the PBM industry. It was new then at that time. And listen, this could be politics and telling people what they want to hear. And based upon her research, she decided not to take the opportunity because she saw how much money the PBMs were going to be able to make and these institutional investors were going to be able to make at the expense of patients. And so I said, yeah, right, get out of here. You passed this up. And then I went to go look at her LinkedIn profile. And she was a graduate from MIT. And so at that point, whether this is politics or not, my first thought was she was smart enough to see this coming before we did. She was one of those people that was smart enough to see this coming. And what was coming was this. The PBMs can generate huge overpayments for themselves. And those overpayments rest in the plan's final cost. It doesn't say that the $100 per member per month that we pay, it doesn't say $45 of that per member per month went to the PBM. It doesn't say that. On the form 5500, you got to put in a number for direct costs, and then there's a field that says were there any direct costs or any direct fees. I forget the exact wording, but then it's either a yes or no. There's no, you have to put in the number. When an employer overpays for the prescription drugs, It's here in the ingredient costs. And that overpayment goes in the PBM's bank account. When that same employer is underpaid by rebates, it's here. Both of them negatively impact what you or your clients pay. And the madness of it all is no one is asking, how much am I paying you to be the PBM? Even if I go to a car dealership and I get ripped off, not a car dealership, a car repair shop, and I get ripped off and I'm overcharged, at least I know on my credit card statement what I'm paying that car repair shop. The PBM business model, most aligned, best aligned, it's just a fact. It's one that agrees to ERISA fiduciary standard of care. It's in the contract. It hasn't been watered down. And if it doesn't behave that way, it's in big trouble. Financially, it's in big trouble. I had some furniture purchased recently, and when it was delivered, one of the ottomans didn't come with the legs on it. I have been waiting on this furniture for weeks. And when it arrived and didn't have the legs, they asked me, do you want to keep it or we can take it back? I didn't want them to take it back because the couch, it just didn't look right, right? Without the other ottoman, even though it didn't have legs. You can keep it and we'll get the legs to you. Within 5 days, you'll have them. In my mind, I knew this is trouble. I'm not going to get these legs. And if I take it back after I accept delivery, I got to pay a 15% restocking fee. After 7 days, it's on me, the total cost, whether I get the legs or not. I kept the ottoman, people. Do you know I still don't have the freaking legs for this ottoman? I knew it when I said I'll keep it. This is trouble. Now I got no leverage. I got no leverage. When you enter into an agreement with a PBM that is not fiduciary and you sign that contract and you find problems later, they might pay you something back, but you give up the leverage. Okay, I'm making pretty good. I'm going to fly through this. Okay, I don't want to keep you here more than 55 minutes, maybe 5 minutes for Q&A. So that was just the pricing. That was just the pricing. Let's get into utilization management and product mix, right? So contracting. We've talked about the contracting and the terms and the constituent elements being spelled out in those terms. Exclusivity, avoid that. Give yourselves the option to carve out specialty pharmacy, carve out uh, formulary management, utilization management, especially when the PBM is not fiduciary. Don't be uninformed. Here's a popular saying about pharmacy benefits management. I know just enough to be dangerous, as if that's funny. Because it is dangerous. Be informed. And it's not like riding a bike. You have to stay on top of it, and there's maintenance required to stay up to date and knowledgeable. I'm still learning. And I work for a drug manufacturer. I own the pharmacy, and now I own a PBM, and I'm still learning. Get access to the claims data. Get access to claims level detail. Understand what metrics you want to measure the PBM's performance by. It's not just pricing metrics. You got to have clinical metrics as well. What's our prior authorization approval rate? What's our prior authorization denial rate? What's our generic dispensing rate? What's our generic substitution rate? What's our specialty dispensing rate, which is new, which we coined here just a few months ago? Clinical. There's two primary goals for PBMs: contain cost and improve outcomes. Those are the two goals. Primary goals. We've added safety in there as well and participant satisfaction. So those four are the primary. At the end of the day, if a population for prescription drugs is being managed by a PBM, then if that population's medication adherence is not at least 80% as measured by proportion of days covered, then it's a fail. It's a waste of money, a lot of it, depending upon how close that population is to 80%. The further away it is from 80%, the higher the medical costs are going to be. That's a fact. The backbone of our clinical program is the formulary. The second part of that is our utilization management programs. It requires thinking outside the box, especially now with these curative drugs being created and these weight loss drugs being created. Drug makers, I've always said it, and when I worked for them, I believed it. They're mad scientists. They are in the lab cooking up fantastic products to help people. They just are. And so you've got to make sure the right drug is going to the right patient at the right time. The PA process should require a review of each of these steps before a drug is approved. We take it another step further because we have a P&T committee that is very good at what they do in creating our value-based formulary. We've got two formularies. These are the only two that we work with. They're both value-based, but one of them has GLP-1 drugs on it for weight loss and the other doesn't. That's the only difference between the two. And we model the cost for our clients. If you go, this is what you can look at. This is what you're looking at. But the point I'm making here is this. And by the way, the reason that you need to get ahead of this is because the largest electronic prior authorization vendor in the country is partially owned by what? A drug wholesaler. You think they want a lot of declines on PAs? You think they want that? No, they want product out of inventory. So everyone is trying to get into the bank accounts of the employers that are funding the bulk of the cost within the U.S. Reimbursement and distribution system. 60% of it. If there's a brand drug presented that's not on our formulary, it's a decline automatically with a recommendation for a lower cost therapeutic alternative that is on the formulary. Pharmacists receive a PA, and without this process implemented system-wide, oftentimes if there's no reason not to dispense the drug or it won't do any harm, and even though there might be a lower cost therapeutic alternative available, they will, and I'm not saying, generally speaking, remember that phrase, generally speaking, they'll approve it. They're not concerned about the cost from what the employer is paying. They want a person to get better, and they want to keep them safe. The cost management process. This is what we do in-house. This is our cost management. This is our approach in-house. I talked about the formulary value base. I talked about the criteria that we go through as we work through every single prior authorization. When there's a drug that has a marker and we can send out a pharmacogenomics test to the patient, we've learned for us, we use PGX primarily for depression, right? The drugs are inexpensive, but I can just imagine, because they're mostly generic, but I can just imagine someone dealing with that and having to always try to change dose or change drugs to feel better, to feel normal, when they could have just taken a test to say, hey, this drug isn't going to work for you, but this one will. To lose hope because nothing's working. And then you end up back at the doctor and costs are going up. Right? So pharmacy benefits and medical benefits, they work together. So here's our cost management process. The very first thing we're looking for is copay assistance programs and patient assistance programs. We do this in-house. We walk our patients through each, or we apply the discounts ourselves. We don't take any percent of savings. It's a per member per month fee for all our programs, depending on what the client opts into or not. Right? It's a flat per member per month fee. No extra cost for PAs, no extra cost for appeals, no percent of savings for PAP or international programs. It's one flat fee. This is what we believe our service is worth. We're starting with PAP. If the drug's not available there, maybe the patient doesn't qualify, or maybe the copay assistance is not significant enough. Maybe we can do better. We go international, tier 1 countries, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. If the option isn't available there, we're looking at 340B. It's domestic, right? Net of rebates, meaning because these programs, you're not going to get rebates on these programs. And so what's the savings when you include the missed rebates? Right? 20, 35, 50% in that range, depending on the drug. If 340B isn't an option, then we're looking at site of care management, home infusion for those drugs that can be infused in the home. And last but not least is the specialty pharmacy. Why? Because it's the most expensive. We talked about the clinical piece. And so remember, when you carve out, especially with international programs and you're doing PAP, there's no electronic claim. So the patient doesn't have the benefit of going to the pharmacy to pick up a new prescription, and then for the pharmacist to say, we ran this through. These drugs are contraindicated. They can't be taken together. Or there's age restrictions. You can't take this drug. The electronic drug utilization review does that. When there's no electronic claim, we don't have that safety net. So you got to have something in place, MTM. The government is way ahead of the commercial market with MTM. Some brokers don't even believe in it. There's too much focus. Listen, we're all trying to save the employer money, but you also have to, when it's there and there's a budget or there's savings, plow some of that back into the program. Understand that MTM works when it's done right. These are metrics in which you can benchmark your PBM's performance on. We don't have 80%, 70% approval through the PA. Members know what they need to do. We have members call us when we deny, and they say, tell me what we need to put in the PA, and I'll tell my doctor, and they'll put it in there. You think they don't talk and message on platforms like Reddit? For every 1% increase in generic dispensing rate, let me come back to that. I'm wrapping up here. Let me fly through this. GLP-1s, we have a separate formulary that has them on there for obesity, anti-obesity. GLP-1s are on our formulary, our standard national formulary for type 2 diabetes, Ozempic, but not for weight loss. The reason, or one of the primary reasons, or a reason, is what ICER says, the Institute for Clinical Economic Review. I believe they're nonprofit. I don't know if that really matters. The NFL used to be nonprofit. But they say at these price points, semaglutide, liraglutide, do more harm than good at those price points. Now that I expect that to change at some point in the next few years. Once those studies start to come out, I do expect that to change. Once we learn more, we don't have that knowledge yet. We see the weight loss, but we don't understand yet the additional benefits of it. Opioids, really quickly, opioids and benzodiazepines, BZDs. You got to have opioid management programs in place. Remember I talked about the 4 goals, one of them being safety? Well, some PBMs were taking rebate dollars to keep dangerous opioid medications in a preferred tier to allow easier access to those drugs for members. It's not safe. Those PBMs, some of them have been sued and are being in the process of going through the courts about that. Specialty dispensing rate. What percent of all drugs being dispensed are specialty drugs? No one's talking about this. The PBMs that own specialty pharmacies and the manufacturers are trying to drive up that utilization. Remember, I talked about the 4 cost drivers. Price, utilization was one of them. Product mix was one of them. This is both utilization and product mix. Utilization is about the day supply being dispensed. What channels are those drugs flowing through? Specialty or traditional pharmacies or mail order pharmacies? Product mix in this example is, of all the claims being dispensed or adjudicated, what percent are specialty drugs? What percent are generic drugs? The benchmark for generic is 9 out of 10 drugs are generic. For specialty, you need to be tracking this metric. If you look here, if you go from 2%, this is based on an average cost for a 28-day supply of $8,000. That's fair. If you go from 2% to 4% of all claims being dispensed are specialty, the cost goes from $4.5 million to 13.7 million, a $9 million increase. It's got to be a metric that we're measuring. The GDR, it's not uncommon to see 83 or 84% GDR with no pushback. It infuriates me. CMS, their benchmark is 90%. That's what we measure our performance on. How do we get there? Give people the know drugs that they need to get, at the same time trying to contain our clients' costs. Well, if you go from 84% to 90%, it is a $3 million savings. Remember, you're replacing a drug that cost $500 for one that cost $20. Measure PBM's performance and evaluate it not on just on the discount guarantees or did it meet or exceed its rebate performance. Look at the total cost of care. Look at the total cost of pharmacy care. The metric is per member per month. Evaluate these numbers in the proposals and evaluate it in the PBMs, the incumbent's performance. The discount guarantees, the pricing, NADAC plus, AWP minus, ASP plus, all these are a means to an end. The end is what's the total cost of care and how are you managing it, looking at the per member per month cost. When you do all of these things, the GDR, you're managing the SDR, fiduciary contract. Now, where the PBM isn't steering patients to specialty pharmacies, the PBM isn't keeping any rebate dollars, the PBM isn't keeping any pharmacy network spreads. Like our current client, in its first year, it goes from $120 to $50 per member per month. That difference of $70 per, and this is all in, this is everything, all in, net of rebates. That difference, $70 per member per month, at a minimum, went directly into the PBM's bank account. Went directly into the PBM's bank account. They were charging more for their fee than what the entire benefit program was supposed to cost to run. Our client sent us an email in his very first year with us and saying, hey, you are a significant contributor to our client winning a Health Rosetta Rosie Award. We don't need laws to fix this thing. We just need the smart people to step up and say enough is enough. That's my time today. So, okay, I am going to stick around just in case any questions come through, and you will get a recording of this in your inbox at some point tomorrow morning. We were jam-packed today. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you down the road.